Hey, you know, if Bernie Sanders is in the news, the story will center on his great adherence to individual liberty, historical truth, and economic wisdom. Who am I kidding? This is Bernie Sanders. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV, and you know it as well as I do. Bernie Sanders' ignorance of economics and history seems to know no bounds, and the latest opportunity for him to show us this ignorance appeared on June 18th, when this font of wet-lipped wisdom continued his stellar track record by tweeting this.
The video game industry made $43 billion in revenue last year. The workers responsible for that profit deserve to collectively bargain as part of a union. I'm glad to see unions like IATSE, that, by the way, would be the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, and the broader At the Game Workers movement organizing such workers.
And this gives us the opportunity to gather some intellectual ammunition, not only about the video gaming industry, not only about economics, but also about the ahistorical notion that unions helped give Americans the 40-hour work week and lighter workloads in American history. Now, of course, this is not the first time that the senator from Vermont has been wrong about history or economics. And this time, it's the narrative of big game corporations driving their slave-like employees to madness while the corporations raked in $43 billion in profit last year. But considering that in Bernie's self-important Obama-era auto union bailout, he shoveled $17.4 billion in tax cash taken from people whether they wanted it given or not, this criticism of private voluntarily achieved contract is more than a bit weak. Plus, as Payscale.com reports, the average salary for video game designers is $63,346 per year. Now, admittedly, that's nothing anywhere close to Bernie Sanders' self-selected Senate salary of $174,000 a year, but it's pretty respectable. And of course, as salaried employees, game designers face deadlines, or what they call in the industry crunch time, when a game is getting ready to get put out and they've got to put in a lot of extra hours to make sure it works. All sorts of salaried employees run into this problem because they achieve deadlines. Now, if employees aren't satisfied, it is a competitive market and they're free to go elsewhere. In fact, in the gaming industry, games are so popular that many people have started their own companies via their own self-fundraising campaigns. And what will happen if game designers unionize and drive production prices higher? Well, as the great Jeremy Hambley of The Quartering on YouTube has reported,
the more people push for unionization in this space, the worse it's going to be for game developers. Why? Well, because your job is replaceable. This isn't personal, it's just a fact.
Now, besides that, let's look at the ethics of Bernie and his pro-union stance. This man is complaining about how other people engage in private contract. Well, if he doesn't like how others engage in trade, let him offer his own company. God knows, Bernie, you've got the money to do it now. Goodness knows, you might be able to attract some of the best employees if you change the playing field. And finally, there's the underlying mythology beneath Bernie's pro-union rhetoric, that unions are responsible for easier work weeks in America. Now, the first pro-union law in U.S. history was the 1926 Railway Labor Act, which mandated that if employers wanted to change work rules, they had to get the consent of the employees. Now, it's one thing if employees want to collectively bargain. It's another thing if politicians force the employers to have to deal with those employees and not be able to drop them the way they might want to. That is reprehensible, and that is an interference between private contractors. And to wrap this all up, Let's dispel the notion that unions are responsible for giving Americans the 40-hour work week and lighter workloads in American history. As Julian Adorni writes, economist Robert Waples notes that the average work week has been decreasing since the 1830s. By 1938, when President Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, mandating a 40-hour work week, such a law was virtually unnecessary. Over the previous century, market forces had driven the average manufacturing work week from almost 70 hours to just over 50. Other industries were even lower. In 1930, for instance, railroad workers worked an average of 42.9 hours per week. Coal miners worked an average of only 27 hours. Henry Ford implemented a 40-hour work week in 1926 because he believed that consumers with more free time would buy more products. Other large companies followed suit. Just 1 year later, 262 large companies had adopted 5-day work weeks. For the first time, people experienced work-free weekends. And as the great economist and economic historian Thomas D. Lorenzo notes, the shorter work week is entirely a capitalist invention, as capital investment caused the marginal productivity of labor to increase over time. Less labor was required to produce the same levels of output. But I don't think we can expect Bernie Sanders to pay attention to any of this information, especially not when he can score points with the people who perceive themselves as Davids out there, even as they show their power within unions and help him by giving him lots of donations. This seems to be his MO, and I don't think it's going to change. After all, a guy who praises the Soviet Union and communist Cuba doesn't really know a lot about economics. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and to tell your friends about us. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that little bell because it will tell you when new videos are available. Hey, really, thanks so much for this opportunity. It's great to talk to you. And don't forget to comment. I'm always in there talking to people. For MRC-TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.